Welcome to the Janine Deanna Podcast. I'm Janine, and I'm joined by my best friend and the love of my life, Dana Lattery.
We're partners in both life and business, which, as you can imagine, has produced some incredibly valuable conversations from both a female and a male perspective. Through wisdom, vulnerability, and humor, we want to share what we've learned from our trials and triumphs. We hope to encourage and challenge you to live more intentionally in both your business and your relationships.
We also hope that you leave each episode feeling more joyful, energetic, and focused on your journey ahead. Thanks for joining us. Now let's jump on in.
What's happening, good people?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
It's like we're not in the same room, but yet we're still sharing with each other another day.
Sharing our split level spaces here.
Yeah. So welcome to the Janine Deanna Show. I'm neither Janine or Deanna. I am Dana.
I know. Welcome, you guys. This is a new adventure, kind of a kickoff of where the podcast left off. Can I say it like that?
Yeah, it's so good question. What is the podcast and where is the podcast and where did the podcast go?
Yeah. We're just going to dive right into that. So I think why we're here today is because we had started doing a podcast, the Janine Deanna Podcast. Do you remember when we first, go date
Well,
was?
it was probably a solid year before COVID. So maybe
happened.
3 or 4, maybe 2 years before COVID. We dabbled in it, but like any other person out there knows that consistency is key. And that's really tough because we always kind of flirt with this idea come spring. And then what happens is summer and spring and fishing and I got to go.
Weddings. Yeah, all the things.
Weddings.
So basically, we had started the podcast because we love some of the dynamic conversations that we have, and we really challenge one another from a female-male perspective, from a just differing opinions perspective. And some of those conversations have led to some really great revelations in our life, in our relationship, in our work. And we thought that it would be a really cool place to share via the podcast some of those conversations, because I felt like there was some really great takeaways that if other people were flies on the wall and could hear that,
And,
it would be beneficial.
and privy
So
to that, we wanted people to be more privy to some of our conversations. And I do remember now thinking back, they were on the dog walk, and we always were like, wow, we apparently have so much insight on a dog walk, which we did every morning. And then it became something at the gym where we just, I don't know how we felt so fresh and so inspired in the morning, but as we got into deep conversations, some of them might have left to us separately, going home separate at times.
Yeah.
But for the most part,
not all conversations ended in unison.
But that's the beauty, is what we learned was being able to defend your opinion, and with all due respect to everybody in the conversation. So kind of that's the podcast began like that. It's just sharing our conversations, and we're like, oh man, we could call like On the Dog Walk, because that's kind of where our conversations began. So what, I don't remember what there's some, what was it? The Beard and the Blonde, I believe, was the beginning of that. And you can probably go back on iTunes and listen to some of the beginnings where we.
Well, I think what's important now is that we started it, and then we kind of dabbled, and then the reality of our life set in, of our seasonal work, and it got to the point where it kind of got left by the wayside, but we have a lot of fun doing it, and we really enjoyed it. And so after, the last 2 years of everything that had happened, it felt like coming back here was a really, really great way to be able to reconnect with people in a new, fresher way. I know for me, wanting to show up and share this is really about genuinely wanting to connect in a deeper way with people, and hearing not just you and I have conversations, but bringing on other people to be a part of conversations, sharing their stories. All for me, ultimately in hopes of helping anybody who's here watching to find ways to be more intentional with how we show up in our lives. With my work now, which we should get into a little bit of how things have so drastically changed over the last 2 years in our businesses. Being here and wanting to show up, fingers crossed, we're going to do it every Tuesday, being able to show up and just conversate,
Wait,
I
didn't get that in my contract.
Oh, every
Tuesday.
Well, you
a lot
need
of
to
Tuesdays.
be like,
There's going to be some Tuesdays that that's the goal. Let's say
that's the goal.
2 Tuesdays a month.
Oh, we're back.
Well, it's fishing season gets going, and but having said that,
it could be seasonal. It could be a seasonal show.
Yeah, so we'll be back next year, folks. But what we want to point out is, as the podcast evolved and kind of grew a little bit, we realized that what was kind of missing from that was that it was a one-sided conversation. So as the last couple of years evolved or developed in the world of accessibility for live streaming, this is something that we really looked at doing, because this is a live stream and there's people who are here. You are welcome to comment and ask questions, and we definitely want to have more of that engagement versus the one-sided conversation through a podcast. So it kind of gives us more of those elements that fuel us, which is you people. Remember, you can't say that.
I can't say that.
The comments.
Starting out all controversial.
The engagement of people here. So definitely, if you're watching, conversate with us. We have an open platform. We do have a goal in our conversation today. We're going to try to keep this within that 1 hour. Hopefully you don't fall asleep, but we are going to dig deep. We're going to dig into the last, what we called this, I believe 2 years ago, this was the last normal week of our lives before things changed, before we had to just stay home for 14 days and it would all be it would all be
Everything
good.
will
So
be
we're going to
fine.
reflect on that. We're going to look back and say, hey, where were we at this point? What
Yeah.
kind of things did we go through? Most importantly, as entrepreneurs, like, what did we have to do to survive? And more so, what did we have to do to thrive in such a time as of 2 years ago? So yeah, feel free to comment as we get going. Make this an engaging thing. But first, Janine, what have you been up to? Because obviously people weren't allowed to gather, and so that probably hindered weddings.
Oh, dun 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 dun. Yeah, there was a moment where we, had a taste of what was coming. We kind of had, some things started filtering down, and then I remember the day where I felt my heart drop to my feet when it was like our season was done. Our entire business was just done, and there was this, numb feeling where it was so big. It was like, I don't even know. We've been doing this for it would have been our 12th season, so it was hard to process. I don't remember much more than thinking like, shoot, now what? Like, now what? But it was very momentarily because there was so much that we had to start to scramble because of the brides and grooms whose weddings were canceled. And we were obviously a very important part of that. So there was a lot of time spent kind of rebooking, and then people who rebooked ended up rebooking even again and again. Some of the weddings are still yet to happen this year. So there was a lot of administrative stuff happening alongside of us trying to figure out, now that my job is no longer happening, what does it look like to our favorite word that everyone's so sick of hearing, to pivot? How are we going to pivot through this? And one of the things that I had been doing kind of on the side was coaching other female photographers on getting started with their business, or kind of clarifying what they wanted their photography business to look like. And that immediately led way to more coaching. I don't even know if I remember making a decision about coaching. It was that we got to pay the bills and we've got to figure something out stat. And it needed to be something that I was excited to do as we're processing what was kind of happening in the world. So I got to work and I created a course called Simplify to Clarify, which was all about helping female entrepreneurs, because I have been an entrepreneur my entire life. Right out of hair school, I had owned a hair salon, and then I went into wedding photography and now into coaching. And I really wanted to help women, female entrepreneurs, be able to show up and not make their businesses feel so overwhelming or so complicated. I wanted to figure out a way to help women simplify the process of running their businesses. And so Simplify to Clarify was created. I actually launched this course with the first 2 modules created. It was I think the first time I ran it, it was 6 or 7 weeks, 6 weeks with a bonus week. And we basically started going through modules of dealing with your mindset, figuring out a deeper sense of purpose. We went into your ideal client avatar. We went into so much more. And it was a really incredible course and really brought women together online in a time when everybody was sitting at home wondering, kind of what's going on here. And they had space to be able to do that. So I ran the course 6 times over the last couple of years. And it kind of like was a beta testing ground, if you will.
So I just want to pause you there, because I do want to ask you a question, because it's interesting, and the whole point of this is this introspective look back at what took place.
Yeah.
So you said something there and you didn't even pause to say it, but it was like basically everybody was just at home looking for something to do. As it is now, it's very common to take an online course or sit here on a camera and do a Zoom call. But did you even know what Zoom was? Like, had you but seriously, like, we talk about, everyone was just waiting for something to do on a Zoom call. But that
Yeah.
we almost like that word's become like just Google it, like search it, look it up, Google
You
it,
know,
just
you know
Zoom,
what's
Zoom me.
funny? What's funny about that is still in some of my marketing materials, I have the word Skype because that's how I would have meetings with my wedding clients before. So we would Skype. So I actually had gone back to revamp one of the docs, and in there it said Skype. So I think I was just getting into Zoom, updating from Skype, but definitely, you know,
So, but it's interesting because that's the kind of stuff we're going to be talking about is I hate the new norm, but like
yeah,
what's normal now, and that's just what you said. When I paused you there was like it's funny because that's just what we say is like, oh, everybody was waiting at home, but but I think you're not giving your. I remember the conversation about that course, and it was like, oh my goodness, how do you price this out? What do you do?
yeah,
What's the time you give into it? And I remember saying to you, like, well, you should probably do it for free because all the big groups and corporations are doing stuff for free because people don't have
yeah,
money and don't have time. And how funny that is to look at 2 years later where a lot of people just got extremely wealthy out of this
yeah.
whole pandemic. But anyways, go back to your course. Just wanted to throw up a flag and say, hey, that's something that's changed is our vocabulary and how common it is to just throw things out like, and so we just did a Zoom meeting and
Yeah.
but yeah, so how did Zoom affect that or change it, or how was it starting off with Zoom and not touching
Oh,
not touching you didn't touch your people, but like that interaction of like in person is super important for me. How
yeah.
did you feel? How did that work for you?
You know, when we have talked about this in the past, I feel like there wasn't time to really process the feeling of it. It really was, you know, some people through the last 2 years got to like sit at home and it's like I can, you know, do my job from home or I have time off, and there was some chill time for some people. That was not my experience. It was the opposite, but in the most beautiful way. But there's a lot of these little, like you asking me that question, it's like I didn't take time to stop and think about that at all. It was just like, thank God I can connect. Let's use this. Let's go. And I think it was really about creating a safe environment in every one of these courses with the content type. And just, you know, with the women that I was working with, it being we were all collectively moving through everything that was happening, and this course was also we still talk about it in our VIP group today. We still talk about this being a place where everyone can kind of come back to feeling grounded, feeling connected. In this, like, I know we hate saying it, but in the new norm, this is a new way of feeling connected. So Zoom quickly became my best friend. We quickly figured out how to bring small groups together, and I love it. I even still love it today. I spend a ton of time on Zoom with my business now because it has become, except for photography is obviously on the side, but now running a coaching
We
business
should
through
try to
Zoom.
shoot a wedding on Zoom.
Oh my God. Can't even.
No, we just screenshot. Someone walks around with a laptop.
Screenshot. We just screenshot it. Well,
Dial it in. Maybe
anything
it'll
goes.
probably go that way, where
Yeah,
someone
keep
just
that
sets
idea
up
to
4
yourself.
cameras at a wedding, and you just sit there like a
Yeah,
producer and just take the photos.
screenshot it.
Okay, so there we were. I remember where we were when I had my meltdown. Given my business is affected due to travel because I
Yeah.
think we were probably both in the 2 worst pandemic-proof businesses. So you needed people to gather, and I needed people to travel
Yeah.
to produce
Do our
or
jobs.
do our jobs.
Yeah.
And so that was like, oh no. And I remember we became like woggers and yoggers and, like active people at the time, as sure everyone else did. But I remember that one walk and I was like melting down. And I was like, this is the end of us. Like the border's closed. That's
Yeah.
80% of our business. I can't do fishing trips on Zoom call. I can't pivot. I can't pivot that. How does that work? And it's a fascinating thing because I know from, being privy in your coaching business, the conversations are often, we say, well, like, well, what if nobody can come here? Well, what if nobody comes? What if 2 years ago somebody would have said to you, what if you make it through? What if in 2 years you're no worse for wear and it is what it is? What if in 2 years you're more successful? What if? But I think the mindset at the time of our last normal week 2 years ago was we all built the monster and the what ifs. It can't happen. What if? What if? And for us, it was just a beautiful thing how a bunch of amazing local people came to try fly fishing. But the pivot there was that everyone was kind of stuck here and people had to do things locally. They couldn't travel. And people wanted to get outdoors more. So not all pivots went digital. But I mean, I think that one of those big lessons is that I sit there today, and I think now as I think we're more, well, not everyone, this is a choice, but I think, I don't want to say guarded or calloused, but I think we're better fit for a situation now. And I feel very blessed having been able to go through the last couple of years and come out on this end and say, business is ebbs and flows. Entrepreneurs, like, you spend 90% of your time looking for work and you actually only work 10% of the time. But now you feel like, man, I got a skill set with me that's able to withstand something like this. And the reason I bring, go ahead.
Well, I'm just wondering, do you feel like on this side of it, because when I think back to that week before everything changed, I was being super, super social. We had the Women in Wealth Gala. We had the Taking Risks things with Wine Women in Wellbeing. Britt and I were out at a bunch of events. Like, we were busy, and it was, the norm. And I had a full calendar. And then this, kind of came in and happened so abruptly, hindsight. And then it was like, and I remember that feeling of my calendar being cleared and feeling relief in one hand, like, and then, like, what the heck is happening with the world? But then in the other hand, there was such a relief, and there were so many things I let go of that had this had not happened, I wouldn't have found the space in my life to realize some of the stuff. Like, I had was doing some stuff I didn't want to do. I was saying yes to some things I didn't want to do, but it ultimately created this new space. And I know for me, my business completely pivoted. Like, so say that I was, 80% weddings before and 20% coaching. It's now, it's done a massive flip. And so do you feel like now you have such a different perspective on your business? Like you said, now you're kind of understanding this skill and sustainability through everything that happened. But I feel like I have such a deeper sense of understanding of why I do what I do and how I do it and who I want to serve. And it feels more fulfilling. And I know probably 99.9% I wouldn't have this gift if I didn't go through the last 2 years. So I'm curious for you with your business, not completely shifting, but as far as to something else, but a different, understanding or appreciation for your business came out of this.
So I'm setting you up to ask a bigger question through this, but to answer that, so I think what we did do was we added more pieces to the pie, our marketing pie, which is a whole nother conversation on how that works. But probably I'm in a place of understanding more that's stressing about it, or what they say anxiety is, like the fear of future pain.
Yeah.
Just actually saying to myself, like, what if it doesn't, it doesn't make you be careless and ridiculous with your money and foolish in the way you spend your time. But it's like, how much time did people spend worrying about? I mean, and I'm not getting into the politics of the whole thing for the past years, but how much time did people actually spend worrying about something that was what it was, right? 2 years later to look back on that, and it's like, it's powerful, but what I'm setting you up for here is because you did have the introspect to take something out of this and become better. And why I say this is because you worked with coaches through this time. You worked with people to help you build your business and help you to see things. We had each other, which sometimes those very deep introspective conversations can be really tough for couples to have because, they can turn to English.
You walking home from the gym. You walking home from the gym and me taking the car.
We needed more exercise that day. But I guess what I put at this is like, not everybody went through this and came out on this end saying, wow, I'm better. I learned something. I think.
No. Do you mind if I interrupt you? I just wanted to say, I remember us having a conversation, walking the track in the gym. And I remember saying, I don't know, obviously I don't know what this is gonna be, but I cannot come out of this without some kind of massive growth, because whatever is coming, we had the foresight to be able to see, the magnitude of what it was. And I said, I will be damned if I don't come out of this with something, a shift in like a deep shift in how I see my life or how I show up or who I am. And that happened. And you're right. Not everybody. Yeah, I think like the one meme that I loved the most was like this big fat beaver laying on the beach beside this like super fit model. And it was like, some of us did the pandemic like this and some of us did the pandemic like this. And it was just this, like, everybody processed this completely different. For some people, it was just survival. And on, that spectrum of what survival meant is very different for everyone. But I just, speaking to how you and I move through it as entrepreneurs and having everything, these some very, poignant moments of what are we doing? How are we showing up? How are we shifting? How are we moving forward with this?
Like we learn to really be intentional about everything, like our time. We learn to be intentional about our money. We learn to be intentional about our energy.
Parenting.
And I bring all this up because I want to ask you the question, having coached, I don't know the number in the last couple of years through the pandemic, but probably you're near 100 with the women you've worked with in your workshops and one-on-one coaching and girls in your VIP class. But what would you say is, and I'm not asking for stories of specific people, but like, what would you say was one of the most common problems when you began coaching people that you could say, I think everybody is lacking some sort of foundation, or like what? I mean, we've talked about this. That's why I know your answer. But like, what is this common thing that most people? So they're like, I want to be a photographer. I want to be a clothes maker. I want to be a. But then what you always circle back to is something very ground level, and I think you've seen that commonly. And just kind of talk on that.
Well, overwhelm. They're overwhelmed. When women come in, it's like, I guess specifically to working with female entrepreneurs. We'll start with that we, a lot of us are creatives and therefore inundated with ideas and things that we want to create and do. And we're constantly inspired. And it's overwhelm would be the number one thing that women that I work with talk about. I'm feeling overwhelmed. Underneath the umbrella of overwhelm was a lack of consciousness around how you use your time, time management. The other would be energy management, personal energy managing, what drains you, what fills you, and then boundaries, a lack of boundaries, not understanding every single relationship in your life should have defined boundaries. And that's not to be regimented. That's just truly, truly to aid you. But so much of the women coming in had all these beautiful ideas that they were fully capable of, but not all at once. And so then it became the struggle of, well, what do I prioritize? And then that became, well, what matters most to you? Well, then that became, what are your core values or your driving principles, the guiding principles in your life? What are the things that you are building a compelling future around? And so then we started to say, well, where is it we're going? And we were just talking about this in the VIP group this week, where the women, it's like, if you don't have an idea of where you're going as an entrepreneur, what it is you're specifically working towards, it's like you get in this little motorboat and you turn it on and you're just like all over the ocean. And you're just like, ooh, that looks cool over there. And you go over there and the wind comes and kind of gusts you over here and you go over and we're not locked in on a lighthouse. We're not locked in on that North Star, the thing that's driving us. It's like setting that GPS and knowing this is what we're moving towards. And so, the women that we created, Simplify to Clarify for, that I created it for, was really to help women have clarity around this mental clutter and how do we prioritize the things that matter most so that we're building a life that we love and that we are enjoying the journey, that it's not so much about the destination, but who we become along the way. And it felt like aha moment after aha moment. And these beautiful women were just ready to show up, like hungry for the change, hungry to be done with the word busy, right? I think that's a 4-letter word in my vocabulary. I don't like the word busy. And then I don't have time for this was another thing. The girls in the group know that we don't say I don't have time. If you're alive, you have time.
Let's talk about that.
And we're dealing with priorities.
Just a interject into your
interject
into you. I meant to say your story.
Okay.
The idea there is that
welcome Dana Lattery, folks.
The busy, okay, and why I wanted to stop you there was because it's something that the pandemic sort of did to people, but my opinion on it is so there's doing things to people, there's reactionary things where a lot of people reacted, I feel, to the pandemic, where they were like, oh my gosh, I'm so busy, and then like you said, it cleared my schedule and I was like, oh man, this kind of feels good. I don't really think it felt great because that schedule also included finances coming in. That was the year of work gone. So when we say the word busy, when we say I don't have time for that, COVID gave people that, oh, hey, let's react. And so we talk about surviving versus thriving. Surviving people react to things, and thriving people respond to things. And I think in the COVID situation at the beginning, people were we reacted, and we reacted to everything. And it was just like all this information coming in and react. What's true, what's not true. But people often said in the beginning, oh, I have time. I have time to stay home, and I have time to learn to bake, and I have time to learn dances on TikTok. I have time to watch Tiger King. I have time.
Yeah, we did.
I have time to do things. But how quickly, because this is what a reaction does, is how quickly people became so busy again. And so it's interesting because I know it's something you talk about a lot with the girls you coach. It's something you continue to talk about with yourself, is this busy. I'm too busy. I don't have time. And then we always say in the mindset shift is, how about we say it's not a priority.
It's not a priority.
But I just will finish that thought. I wanted to add that because COVID gave people a reaction to say, oh, I actually have time now. But because it was a reaction for most people, they didn't respond properly, and it didn't change which is something I'm kind of sad about. Is and that spurred us, that conversation about this, and what we're talking about today is, I don't know if most people truly changed, and that's kind of sad to me. In that,
why are you saying that? Why do you think that people didn't change? Because let's just remember, nobody knew how to handle what we didn't know was coming, right? So what do you mean people didn't change?
Well, it's interesting because if you take back to kind of like the beginning of COVID and you say, we're all in this together. People were full of love. They were full of compassion. Everybody felt that they were together in the pandemic. It was just a beautiful thing, and people had time, and people like the beauty of probably the first 3 months of 2 years ago was inspiring. And I think a lot of people, it was really cool to see, like, whether now it's like, whether they were true or not, but like videos in Italy where they were singing to each other on their apartment buildings, whether you saw people going out of their way to be super awesome to their neighbors, and people were just literally full of love, compassion, and they had time, and the whole world stopped turning. And now
we did this from Love photos as well, right?
I know, so when you ask the question, why don't I think people have changed? Because all of a sudden, a year later, we got so swung into hate. Hate was a predominant feeling that people had, because if you didn't seek the proper norm or the proper narrative, you were against the flow. You were a anarchist and a bad devil person. And this isn't just like talking about COVID, or so many things became magnified in this time because people, and this was one of our podcasts, was how decision fatigue would create what we have today. And I would love for people to go back and listen to that podcast, because I literally called it and I said, we are so inundated with what is the right decision. And when people do that, eventually there's an outrage. And we look at things over the course of the last couple of years, and it was a strong movement in the States that saw a lot of rebellion for the BLM movement. And this isn't an opinion about it. This is just a fact of what took place. Then we saw more movements take place up here in Canada for that. Then we saw movements take place for freedom. We saw movements take place for vaccinations. And it just became, people were revolting. And it was whatever they could jump on, they jumped on, and they revolted. And because, like we did that podcast 2 years ago, that was this decision fatigue where people didn't know what the right or wrong thing was anymore. And so now we're at a point here 2 years later, and potentially World War III is on the brink. And it's just it's sad to me how much people are, the dissent between people from back to 2 years ago, the love from Olds with Love, from like, we're all in this together. Just people were so soft and kind, and didn't judge people. It was just like,
but it's like we're soft and kind before everything happened. Like we've talked about scar tissue. You and I have talked a lot about a scar tissue society, and I'd love for you to actually share that opinion, because I think it's extremely helpful to understand, wrapped up with that decision fatigue, but that scar tissue society of people's approach to a lot of the stuff that's going on.
What she's talking about is, I have a theory which we call the scar tissue society. And essentially, I've talked about it before, but what it means is, think of a scar on your body, and how that scar doesn't really feel. There's a weird feeling there, but it's not the actual feeling. So when an injury heals, we get scar tissue. And so the nerve tissue is never really the same. It's sometimes hypersensitive, and sometimes it's dull and almost has no sensation. So in your epidermis layers, your dermis and your skin, and the way that the nerves go, the way to truly feel on that scar would be to go deeper. So you'd have to drop down a layer of skin and to get to a different layer of nerves. But as you go deeper, it's like, ow, I feel this. And it's like, and I bring that up in the metaphor to society because we're so inundated with the next worst thing. Like tomorrow is the next worst thing, and Saturday is the next worst thing we've ever seen. And it just keeps happening. And we are so quick to scroll past it because we don't feel it. That scar tissue's there. And I think we have been so wounded over the past 2 years and it's not COVID, it's all the things that came up through COVID and the dissent with the people, the anger, the frustration, the I'm right, you're wrong. It scarred us. And now we need something so traumatic to happen or we won't feel it and it won't get our attention. Whether that's, people throwing us the information do that, or I don't know, but like we're not feeling things anymore. And so that's when I say people aren't changing.
Yeah, we're feeling it very different. But I feel like we need to like elevate this conversation because it feels like when we're looking back at, 2 years ago and feeling like, who did we become along this journey over the last 2 years? Built up scar tissue, experiences that pushed some people to brinks, that helped people. Some people came out of this, like you said at the beginning, on the upside, massively on the upside, whether that was financial, relationally, whatever it was. There was a ton of things that people also came out with this really for the betterment. And everybody handled it different. And everybody did what they felt was best. And as we all moved through it, and I guess when we're kind of coming back to kind of bring the conversation back to us thinking about that last normal week and like where we were before we moved through all this stuff. How do you, and I kind of asked you this before, and I'm curious, how do you feel you personally as a person changed over the last 2 years? Like what, if we're talking about this introspective, who we want to be as we move through this, because I believe with my whole heart that if we don't come out of things like this with better self-awareness, to start as a starting point, better self-awareness, we the scar tissue is runs so deep. So I'm curious for you, how you feel like it's changed you over the last 2 years going through all this.
Yeah. And so, and I kind of touched on this earlier, but just to add to a comment you said about if we didn't come out of this, then you didn't quite finish the statement, but I assume you'd say, well, then what a shame that it is. What I do want to point out is probably what you do in your line of work is like, that's why people came out of this successful, is because people like yourself were there for them, helping them. And I mean, we would never look at a volleyball team or a hockey team without a coach and hope the team went through the trials and tribulations of a season and came out on the other end successful. And it is a touch of a shameless plug for you, but because you can say that, I don't think everybody can resonate with that, because a lot of people came out and said, I just got by. And
just survived.
In the beginning, cool. I look at that a little different now, because I think like you, and it's like, if you didn't come out of this with some sort of a change, why did you go through it? Like, you know what I mean? Like that's a really crappy way to spend 2 years if at one point you didn't find a way to come out of this as a better person. And so ultimately for me, what I think was probably hammered home more for me over the past couple of years was just the loving people aspect. And it's hard. And it's hard because there's difficult people out there. But I really tried myself over the past couple of years because there's so many poopy people who want to bash you on social media for what I truly don't know what, I mean, in a deep introspective level, I know, but
Yeah.
I don't know. And so I really challenged myself, instead of getting caught up in hating people, because that's easy to do and that's pretty common what's happening. I just really challenged myself to just love on people. And you talked about boundaries. It doesn't mean, in the social media aspect that you need to like carry on relationships. It just means that my rhetoric or my response isn't out of hate, but just out of it's okay. It's your thoughts. You hate me or you hate what I think. That's your thoughts, and I just if you want a hug, I'll give you a hug, and that usually made people upset.
Yeah.
But the one thing I'll truly leave with, what I've taken out of this is, I will say this in a catchphrase that goes like this: invest in the ingest. Okay? So invest in the ingest. So we're inundated with information all the time.
Yeah,
And
more than we can process.
what
on
source,
any level.
what blah, 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 who's right, who's wrong, is this true? And I sit here almost jaded because I don't know what actually exists as truth out there anymore. And I am okay with that because I don't know. And good, bad, or ugly, favoring my opinion or against my opinion, it's just like, okay. And so what I encourage people to do, what I've learned in the past couple of years, is loving on people more. And that's a big motto in our business. And then I really wanted to invest in the ingest. So like, and when we say invest, it's like, I want to know what I'm ingesting. I want to spend time and energy in understanding what I'm ingesting, like what's coming in. I thought of this, a metaphor where a lot of people have hair problems, and so they invest in thousands of dollars of hair products. And if you truly understand the base of where your hair comes from, it's a replicated cell. And so probably what you're intaking as far as like your food, your diet, has a big effect on your hair. And so a lot of people, they invest on the topical of that, and they're like, oh my goodness, the product's not working, and da-da-da. It could help, but like when you truly look at the ingest, and that's when I bring back to this, it's like what you're putting out there. I have hair here, nowhere else, and bald. But like what this is showing what's on the ingest. And so take time to say, where am I focusing on? What am I looking at 24/7? Because it's deeply forming your opinion. It's also affecting your business. And as entrepreneurs, and I circle this all back to working with a coach, working with somebody who can help you see that. It's like, hey, you're spending way too much time. A big thing you do is like time tracking. It's like, where are you spending your time? What's the triggers that are taking you away from the lighthouse? Where's your focus? Where's your GPS coordinates? Because you said they were here, but you're over here. So you need to invest on the ingest, because what is consuming your time, your energy, that ultimately is going to affect the way you do business. That's going to affect the way and who you are in business. And it's going to affect the way your business treats people, because people are a big part of doing business. So that's
I think a lot of people also when we're so inundated with so much information, there's also a level of numbness that happens where we're ingesting almost subconsciously, like where we're not paying attention, but it's still everywhere we turn, everything we turn on, conversations with people, we're constantly being inundated with information. And if you have no concept or self-awareness of what's happening, just like you said, it is impacting your business. It is impacting your relationships. It is impacting how you parent, how you consume. There's so many components that contribute to how it is we show up in our lives. And for me, ultimately, with my own journey, but then also with the women that I work with, I want to create a new level of self-awareness so that we are intentional about what we consume. We are intentional about what we do not consume. We're intentional about the relationships that we nurture or choose to no longer nurture. And then having, words of wisdom that do come in and help lead us in a direction that ultimately where we want to go. But I think at the end of the day, genuinely looking at 2 years of coaching, having a sense of true clarity about who it is you want to be and what it is you want your life to look like. Some people spend more time planning their weekend trips or a week away in Mexico than they do planning a compelling future vision, than they do sitting down to do the work to see, how do I want my life to look? And then who do I need to be in order to create that life? And really then having radical responsibility for how you're going to show up and implement the habits, like time tracking, like having difficult conversations, for setting boundaries, saying no to some things that, stop people pleasing. I could go on and on about it, but the idea is there's so much information that's coming in. And if we can create a new level of self-awareness about what we're listening to, we can tweak that a bit. We can ingest the things that are serving us, energetically serving us, emotionally serving us, giving us joy, helping us to have more gratitude, all of those good components that ultimately help us to have a deeper sense of understanding about who we are and where it is that we want to go. I don't know if there was a question in there, but the ingesting is everything. And when you're on autopilot, like I would actually say one of the missions of my work is to get women off autopilot, be as intentional as possible. And specifically working with female entrepreneurs, sometimes we forget we get to create the box. We don't have to just get in a box. We get to create the box. And sometimes it isn't about being in the box at all. Sometimes it's about saying that doesn't work for the type of life that I want to have, but here's what does. And I'm going to create that in a way that really allows me to enjoy the journey. And I think that is such an afterthought for a lot of women creating their businesses, is we think, I got to hustle and I got to grind. And don't get me wrong, there is a season for that. But ultimately, if you're stressed out and overwhelmed and feeling out of control, I know that that's a feeling a lot of women had talked about, like they'll just say, like, I'm a hot mess. Everything just feels like, we joke about talking about, like, my life is a dumpster fire. Everything is just like you talked about earlier, I'm just reacting. I don't have time to be prepared because I'm not totally sure what being prepared is for this. I'm just reacting to everything because I'm so busy and I'm saying yes to things I want to say no to. And our plate, our daily schedule is full of things that ultimately are not getting us to where we want to go because we don't have clarity on where it is that we want to go. So the more time we can create, and that's what's really cool about the VIP group, is we meet every week. Every week, it's kind of like coming back first thing Monday morning, getting grounded back into, okay, where is it that I want to go? What is it that I need to be focusing on? And success is built in the little moments every single day. That is where success is built. And so if we don't have that mindfulness around how we're spending our time, what's giving us energy, what's draining our energy, you're just in your little boat.
So would you say that over the past couple of years, as we kind of wind down here, that people have,
Sure,
as entrepreneurs, as the way, what I'll say, just kind of preface that, is like we heard on the radio today, was like, oh my goodness, people don't want to come back to work. So obviously the pandemic has changed the way people do business. And my question to you, after I explore this a little more, is just like, would you say that most people are, in the last couple of years, they're lost because they're searching so hard to say, I can't go back to that because that wasn't pandemic proof? Do you, you talk about people with like no mission, clarity, the vision is not there, they don't have the lighthouse. But would you say that's something that has shifted in the past couple of years, where it's people are like jumping into this, like, I'm an entrepreneur, like, I don't, don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. It's a lot of work. Like, has that kind of hurt the entrepreneur world, or is that, like a lack of vision? Is that common?
Well, because I want to make sure I'm understanding, are you saying people are coming into entrepreneurship because of the shift that's happened globally? Or are you asking, as entrepreneurs already, are we feeling even a deeper sense of lack of clarity?
I'm talking about the 2 years ago when the world changed and people are saying, I done my office job. I'm going to explore. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to work for myself. I can work at home. I can do this. I can do that. So because that shift took place, are you seeing kind of like a pandemic of lost entrepreneurs?
I think that I'm seeing from my little, the little thing that the little window that I have into this, that there is just, because there is a new level of self-awareness, I do see that, where people are like, I don't want to go back to the way it was, because we were disrupted. We were fundamentally disrupted. And so my window and the people that I'm working with, the women that I'm working with, there was a sense of, I don't want to go back. I want to do better. I want to do better. I can see we have a different perspective. Like I can see that wasn't working. I can see that I didn't have my priorities lined up. I can see that wasn't helping my relationship grow or connecting more to my parents. And I even know as a parent, as a quick sidebar, that I've gotten to know my kids on such a beautiful, deeper level that I don't want that to minimize now. So now I got to create a business that allows me the freedom to continue on in the way that relationship has developed over the last 2 years. But I do feel like because we were so fundamentally disrupted, there was like we woke up to some things that were like, I actually don't want to, and I guess I work with a lot of really, really deep heart-centered women who are people pleasers, or perfectionism would come in. And a lot of that, we can kind of see it maybe a bit more for what it is. Like, I don't want to say yes to things that I actually want to say no to, because when you get clarity about where it is you want to go and what you want to do, you start valuing time very differently. Very quickly, you can see, I don't have time to say yes to that. And so you start to gain perspective. But I agree with you, if you're not part of something, or and yes, obviously I'm biased, and I think coaching is a beautiful thing, and it's very impactful and helpful. But if you didn't have something to kind of, say, hey, let's get a little bit deeper perspective on how this impacted you and what changes do you want to make? Because obviously that's subjective and different for every single woman. But there was a sense of, a collective sense, I would say, of I don't want to go back to doing things the way they were, because I can see now I was just in it, like head down in it. I can do better, and I can create more space to have a life and enjoy the journey. And that's what I mean, like, where we don't have to be busy all the time. We don't have to not have time for things. We don't have to say no to social activities now that things are opening back up and we have this availability to be able to connect and meet again. We have this ability to design design our lives on purpose, with purpose, to be intentional about how we buy groceries, how we bring in new clients, how we market our business, how we parent, a deeper sense of awareness about these tiny little things that ultimately, when we're paying attention, improves our life as a whole. And we were given time and space to step back from what we had been doing and to say, I want to do better. Not everybody had that, right? And I really want to be sensitive to the fact that there was a lot of people who just survived this, and that is a win. That is 100% a win. And I do want to say, it is okay if you came out of this and survival was what you came out of it with, then that's a beautiful thing. As an entrepreneur, it was just a different lens for me. It was a different lens for me to say, my business, my career is completely shifting. What I've known for a decade is gone. We've got to pivot and recreate something. And it gave me a gift. The pandemic and this time gave me the gift of moving into exactly where I want to be and what I want to be doing. And had this not have happened, I would have kept grinding with weddings, full-time shoots throughout the week, and a schedule that really ultimately didn't allow me to be as present with my family as I wanted to be. So I'm thankful for it.
a perspective on that to kind of finish the conversation here, and we'll open up if people have questions or whatever, and we'll chat about that. But the idea that it gave you a gift of time, or a gift of perspective shift. And I said this to you today and you did not agree with me. But it fascinates me, and maybe we'll just leave it open as a rhetorical question, or we don't have the answer. What's interesting is life is always there with a gift. And I talk about with like opportunities, like people literally think the opportunity knocks on your door and you go answer it. And I don't think that's true at all. I think opportunity is something that we forge out, we go find. And if you're not super in tune, aware, hypersensitive with what you are and what that opportunity could look like, it just flies by you. But having said that, 2 years ago, people started, had to go home to work. And this is my metaphorical blah, blah. Is you said the way business is done has changed. And I said, nothing has changed about the way business has been done. And I didn't want to explain it to you at the gym this morning because I thought it would ruin the authenticity of us discussing it here. But what I meant by that, and this is great because this really adds to what you just said, is I truly believe that the business. So
I'm so curious to what you're gonna say.
Because 3 years ago, a really smart individual could have said to his entire Synovus group, or oil and just think of locally in Calgary, whatever, some business guy who's an oil and gas guy, he has this forward thinking epiphany. And I know that Google has done this with their employees, and it didn't really take off with a lot of other companies. But if this guy would have said in corporate Calgary, hey, I got a shift in thinking here. Nothing needs to change that. We don't need a pandemic, but it's a special person who can think above the clouds and be super intuitive and be like, I got an idea. Let's have you guys go home and work from home two to 3 days a week. I don't want you to work to clock hours. I want you to be task orientated. Okay. So if you can go home and work 2 days or 3 days a week and you get your tasks done, we're effective. We can keep this model going. And what we can do is we can cut out all of this office space, the cost that we need. We still have in-person meetings and blah, 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 because that social aspect, the team building is super important. And I say that because what companies have seen in the past couple of years, and they're staying with it now, is because people are now saying, oh, you want to hire me? I don't work 5 days a week at the office. I do half and half. So I do 2 and 3, 3 and 2 the next week. Companies are like, well, we can't complain because we have seen growth, exponential growth, and happy employees, productive employees. So we can't go say we want you back here. And so this is my point. Nothing changed in the way they do business other than a perspective. And that goes back to what you were saying, where it's like you took the gift of time that COVID gave to do something great with it. Okay? COVID didn't give you that gift. That's a perception of, oh my goodness, I have to make this shift. And you also said, I wouldn't have done this without that forcing of COVID, the gift, which you call a gift. So what I challenge people through this metaphorical question or statement or whatever you want to take it as, what if we did something before we were forced to? What if we were those thinkers, those forward thinkers in our businesses, in our entrepreneurial endeavors that made us do something a year before the pandemic, right? And so that's just what I'm saying is like those possibilities are out there. Those possibilities to change the way things are done exist, but oftentimes we have a glass ceiling and we're like, I'm gonna, like you talked about the box, and we're like, well, I'm an XYZ. I got to be an XYZ. I can't think outside of that. And so I just challenge people, like, what does that make sense? Why I say nothing changed?
with what you're saying is there's also a catalyst that I believe has to happen in order for uh that level of
It's
thinking. I
it's a
don't like
catalyst,
there
but it
has
exists in your mind. It's a mind shift catalyst. It's not an actual. There's things that happen to people like, oh wow, I lost my business, like straight up changed the way I did. This probably was more of a mind shift catalyst, but I'm saying those can exist all over the place. And if we're aware and we're hypersensitive to things, and like you said, you have your GPS, you have your lighthouse, you have your direction, you have your
yeah.
coach, you have your accountability partner, you know so hard where you want to go. These little catalysts will occur along the path, but if you don't know where you want to go, you're just, we say in photography, you're spray and praying, like hoping after 300 shots the two of them are in focus. And I still see
Yeah.
photographers doing that to this day because they don't know what they're doing. They don't have
Yeah.
a purpose as to what shot they need. And that's just kind of what I'm saying is like, yes, you're right. There's a catalyst, but the catalyst doesn't need to be a worldwide of it is, but there's probably other catalysts that existed before. You just
Of
weren't,
course.
you weren't fully hyper focused on what you wanted. And it was like, maybe this, maybe that, maybe this. So this thing just kind of swung you and said, well, now you don't have a choice. You will
Yeah.
sink or swim.
But I do think like a lot of how do I say this? Like a lot of people who have entrepreneurs, I'll say, who have these ideas of things that they want to do, there's sometimes you're wearing the 12 different hats. If you're a small business, you're wearing all the hats of all the things you have to do, and some of these things I don't think who knows, I'll never know, I'll never be able to say, but would have created what I did create or shifted into this job the way that I have if I wasn't forced to, like I was. I don't there was such a massive catalyst that it wasn't even, I had no choice,
It's a
right?
sink or swim. It's like, hey, jump in, go to the bottom of the ocean, or learn to swim. And so that's a
Yeah.
survival tactic. And I guess what I'm just trying to like inspire in these words is, what if we start intentionally looking for things that like, like we're before someone else thinks this. Like,
Yeah.
what if there's companies out there that were already live streaming? What if they were already like, it's like as this turned, everybody became a live streamer. Everybody became working on Zoom. Everybody became, and it's like, well, what if you were the company that was already doing this?
So how do you be that though? So is correct me if I'm wrong, but part of this is saying when you're moving in alignment with where it is you want to go, you're far more likely to see those opportunities. But I also agree, if you're so inundated and overwhelmed with, lack of systemizing in your business, too much ingesting,
Invest
all
in
of
the
those
ingest.
things, right? All of those things that can cause you to feel overwhelmed. You don't have the capacity to even see opportunity when it's right in front of you because it's too much. We've got too much on the plate that we're trying to create or bring to life, or
well, it's I'm too busy, I'm too overwhelmed, I have too much on the go, I have too much, I have overwhelm. And to kind of wrap up with the 2 years ago in our last normal week of our lives is like, what if before COVID we would have been so intuitive with what we wanted, we would have made changes that weren't forced upon us by a pandemic? What if we were so in line with what we wanted out of life that COVID didn't, it didn't.
Is the better question though right now, like what do we do now that we've been through that? How do we take that information now? Because what if, we'll never know, but moving forward now, that's why we have, like, there's always these big lessons in life that it's like, now moving forward, how can I look for opportunities to create a different level of sustainability, like you talked about, or create
there's that, but
looking for
I'm
deeper
probably
opportunity.
pulling back a bit from the bigger thing of like, how can I make more? How can I diversify? I'm saying, what is it you really want? What is that one thing that you're like, this is what I'm put here to do? A quote from the opening thing. It's like, you're a child of God and you're playing small does not serve the world. And so my challenge is just that, like, what is it you want? What is it you want to go after? And you're not sitting here putting it on the back burner saying, if the time is right or if I'm forced into it, that's going to be something I want to do. I'm saying no, us playing small, us not believing in ourselves, us not reaching out for an accountability partner, a coach, a friend, somebody who's going to help us grow towards the things we want. But you got to know what you want. You got to be so clear on what you want that literally your lighthouse shines through the fog and your little motorboat that Janine talked about earlier, and you're destined to get there. And that's why there's like, I talk about all this time. It's like, and we've talked about this for 10 years. It's like, there's this point of the crux of the mountain where most people just say, that's a great view and it's really hard and I'm going to just be done. There's very few people who get over that because that's where the work is. But then that's where there's the 1% successful people. Right. And I think the pandemic has taught me this. It's like, stop waiting for a world event to take place to push you into doing something. Know what you want, write it on paper, think about it, gratitude it, journal it, find yourself a coach, find yourself an accountability partner, find yourself people, surround yourself with people like your VIP group. And it's like, that drives you, that helps you go into the right place so that you can say, I already did this before the pandemic. Aha, look at me. I already thought outside of the box before I was forced to. And that is where true entrepreneurs become incredible and their businesses blow up.
I want to touch on the fact that when you're saying like, just figure out what you want to do. And I have to laugh because that is the hardest question of life. What am I here for? Like, what am I here to do? And it also can take a lot of self-honesty, which what I know through my own journey and then through working with women is it's very hard to be honest with what it is we actually want, because when we're honest about it, it creates a domino effect of changes that need to happen in order to bring what we really want to fruition. And sometimes that can be disrupting, where you have to move, you can't live here anymore, or not to get into too granular, but it can have, this really deep impact on the comfortability of your current existence. And so
but did
when we talk about,
did COVID not disrupt the comfortability of existence? Do you know what I mean? So that's why I'm parlaying it with COVID. It's like, so much changed, so much disrupted.
It did change.
But the way business is done didn't change.
I was trying to catch you on
Agree to disagree, but I'm right. Huh. All right. Well, we've gone 12 minutes over the time that we allotted for ourselves.
Yeah.
We don't have a time.
Thanks for having the conversation with me, though.
Always.
Thanks for being
my
here.
pleasure.
Thanks
so we'll hang out for 2 more minutes. If you guys do have questions, comments, if you're watching this as a replay, feel free to also reach out to Janine, not me. I just work here. JanineDeanna.com is how you can find her. I know it's the Janine Deanna Show, but I'm just here to say I highly recommend her. And how much am I getting paid for this?
We'll have to discuss your allowance.
So the Janine Deanna Podcast is now the Janine Deanna Show, which
are we going to throw this on a podcast?
We'll do our best.
Do that?
And by we, you mean me. So
that
open
sounds like
conversations, inspiring, hopefully, entrepreneurs out there. And if you need anything from either of us, Deb says, thank you for this today. So
hi, Deb. Hope the dentist was good.
Yeah. That's just kind of how it goes. We do have a bit of a structure, but most of it is just open platform. And the more that you guys conversate with us, the more we can go down rabbit trails.
Rabbit trails. Yeah, rabbit trails. Okay. Thank you. Let's go do lunch, babe.
Where are we going for lunch?
You know exactly.
It's a good question. No shameless plugs here. This show is not sponsored by anywhere that we're going to eat. The kitchen. Anyways, I'm Dana
You're
Ladry.
cooking.
I'm Dana Ladry.
And I'm Janine Deanna.
I'm trying to pull away from Thursday Night Live talk, but I'm like,
you're not.
But it's just me. So I guess it's just me. You get me here, you get me
Thursdays.
Thursdays.
So
if you're bored
are we gonna be back on the 22nd? Are we gonna come back on the 22nd?
I'll have to check my weather schedule. Probably pretty good chance. We'll do something like that. Anyways,
awesome.
Enough of that.
Thank you.
You guys are all awesome. Thanks for your comments, Dylan and Deb. And until next time, dude, try to seriously figure out what I just talked about in a metaphorical sense and send me your answer. Did businesses change? The answer is no. We'll see you next time.